Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward.
So, I'm not really a small talker, for those of you who don't know me well. I'm not someone who really cares a lot about small talk. I want to get right into what's considered, impolite conversation. I want to talk about religion, politics, sex, those kind of things. Let's just get right into it, is kind of, which makes it hard for me to meet strangers. Because, kind of putting those off a little bit, when I just start going to them about religion or politics, usually not sex. But I've never been the one to talk about the weather, but today I actually want to start to talk about the weather because I've been thinking a lot about the weather, and I've been thinking a lot about vacation. And yes, these two thoughts might be related, because now is the season where the rest of the world looks at Florida, or the rest of the nation, and goes, ha-ha, this time we can brag to you about our weather. And I've been thinking about it a lot because my brother and his wife and my parents are up in Michigan taking these beautiful photos of them snuggling up at a fireplace with sweatshirts on. That's right. As I am sweating and stepping outside, just drenched as I swim through the swamp air that we have here during the summer. And that's just going from the inside AC to the outside AC of my car. It is a long walk. No matter how short the driveway may be, it is a long walk just trying to make that distance because it is so hot here. It reminds me why we don't have a lot of cities in Florida that are hundreds and hundreds of years old. Because before AC was invented, no one wanted to live here. It was up north that was the climate that people wanted to live, but now, thank you, God, for the AC. Let's all thank God for the AC for that. Yeah. It's nice and nice and cool. Amen. That's right. But I've been thinking about vacation, and that made me think about Total Recall. Because I don't really have time for vacation. And in the movie Total Recall, you don't need any time for vacation because what they do is they just implant a memory of a vacation, and you could go anywhere, and you basically, in 2 minutes, wake up, and you have these weeks of memories. Has anybody seen that movie? You know what I'm talking about, right? So one of the things that they say to Arnold Schwarzenegger in the only Total Recall that you should have seen is they say to him, what's the same in every vacation? Does anyone remember what the answer is? What's the same? Oh, Mike does. Go ahead, Mike. You're the same in any vacation. And don't you want a break from you? And I know if I was the one who was asked that question, I'd be like, yes, sign me up. To get a break from myself, man, does that sound like a relaxing vacation. What's confusing to me is, though, he's Arnold Schwarzenegger. What about him does he want a break from? Having the perfect body, the fame, the wealth, what is it that Arnold needs a break from? I would like to take a vacation as Arnold Schwarzenegger. That sounds great to me. But it's often the case that it would be totally wonderful. I don't know, maybe this is just me. I am weird. I fully admit that and embrace that flag. But I would love to be able to take a break from myself, especially those habits about me that are, let's just say, less than pretty. Those habits that I have that I know I don't like, but I still do all the time. And I'm not just talking about the big ones, the big habits we talk about that we know are like really big negative habits. It's the minuscule ones that break us down, that just getting angry or frustrated or stressed or worried. And it would just be so nice to be able to take a vacation from all of that, wouldn't it? Okay, good. There's another freak in the audience. Thank you. All right, so Andre, of course, he's the only one. Yes, I would like a vacation from me. I'd take a vacation as you anytime, Andre. But the point is that how do we do that, right? How do we get to the point where we can take a vacation from us? Because I'm actually going to say today that we can, and it can be even a permanent vacation. It can be a permanent vacation to a better you. And I know it's sounding like I'm about to pitch you some new product. It's like, a better you in 5 minutes, all right? But there's something that is a power that we can harness that allows us to change those habits that frustrate us and our spouses or all the other people around us. There's this thing that we can do, and today I want to talk about it a little bit because today we're celebrating, or soon we're celebrating what? Independence Day, 4th of July. We're not actually celebrating that it's the 4th of July. We're celebrating that it's Independence Day. And today, since it's, yeah, great. We broke away from the Union way before it was cool. Now they're all doing it. But back in the day, there was this king, and he was taxing us without representation, and we call it Independence Day. But the problem with calling it Independence Day is it gives us the idea that it's about us being independent. And I actually think that's a little bit of a myth, because America was not founded on independence. Independence from Britain, yeah, sure, thank God for that. I don't want to drink that much tea. Independence from each other, no. In fact, what happened in America is there was all these guys, and I'm sorry, ladies, it was mostly guys at the time. Your opinions were helpful later on. But there was all these guys who got together, and they dreamed of what it could be like to have a country that worked differently. And it was a real revolution at the time because governments from then before were all things that were dictator-like. They were all things that were about one leader who's ruling the imbeciles and the masses, right? And yet they said something different. They said that we think we can take all these different people from these different cultures and we can make them a country together, putting the hands in the people. With keeping in mind that we are not perfect, we are going to make mistakes, so how do we have these checks and balances? And I think what they came up with was a brilliant solution, but I think it's important for us to understand that what America is trying to be is harder than a lot of other countries. The idea of diversity, we say diversity is our strength. Well, yeah, I love it. I'm one who's like super glad that I live in America that's a melting pot of different cultures. But we have to acknowledge in that that's harder than just having one culture all get together of like minds and do something. That's why we often have where you'll see people huddle together and only be with like-minded people who they look the same, they talk the same, because it's just easier. And when we look at America, we have to see this is a harder goal. And it's a goal we struggled with and are still struggling with for hundreds of years since our foundation. There were some dark times. Sometimes we didn't figure out that maybe the best way to embrace a foreign culture wasn't in slavery. Maybe we should fix that. So it took us a few hundred years, but we fixed that problem, and now we're still trying to figure out how can we all get along. But I love this poem that all of you should be at least somewhat familiar with. It's a poem that, to me, speaks about this difficult thing that America is trying to be. And it even addresses the former way of doing government in the poem. It's called the New Colossus, the new way of reigning. And it was really, in some ways, prophetic because it is true that more and more countries have started to operate like America does in this. And I just want to read it for you a little bit today. Not like the brazen giants of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her miles eyes command the air bridge harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands, you storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. The refuse and refuse of your teeming sores. Send these, the homeless tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. And it's a beautiful sentiment about the former way of doing things, where it was all about the brazen conquering limbs, but now it's going to be a new, bigger dream of let's take all these different cultures together and let's show the strength that we have as a family together. And it's tough and it's hard. But the reason I want to talk about it is not just because I want to talk about America, okay, because I love America. It's also because, America, number one. Yeah, I do believe that. But it's also because I want to talk about church today and how to be this welcoming church that we heard about in this gospel reading. How to be this welcoming church that does that thing in this small little family, where we have that idea of these different people from different backgrounds, and we listen to each other, we learn from each other, and we grow under this one dream, this American dream. Now, talking about the 4th of July, how many of you know about William Dawes? Anybody know William Dawes? One person. You guys don't know the story about him riding through town and telling people the British are coming? Nobody's heard that story? Well, how do you know William Dawes? Who do you think of riding from town to town? Paul Revere. You know more history than me. But Paul Revere, right? That's the guy who did it. How many know Paul Revere's name? Okay, so the truth is there was Paul Revere and William Dawes riding out to town, spreading the news of the British are coming. The British are coming. Everyone to get from street. Okay, that might have been the Russians, and I'm confusing things. But either way. So why did we know Paul Revere and William Dawes? Well, Mike said he had better press. The reality is he spread the news better. He spread the news better. Why? And they talk about this in The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. It's one of my sweethearts. Anyway, they talk about how William Dawes did not know the town. He did not know the people. And so when he was going from place to place, he wasn't taking the best routes. He wasn't knocking on the right doors. The people that you know, it's the middle of the night and they're going to answer. The Minutemen, yeah, the people. Now, Paul Revere, he had those connections. He had those connections with the right people that he knew who to call. And I think that's really important. There's a book called The Power of Others, and it's written by a doctor, Dr. Cloud. Weird name for a doctor. But anyway, Dr. Cloud talked about in The Power of Others how what really is that power that we can harness for change is the power of others. See, what's the same thing that you do in every vacation? That's the same thing in every vacation you. What's the same thing that's the problem with everything that you're trying to accomplish and overcome in your life? You. You are your worst enemy, right? So you've got your limitations, and all of us at some point we hit that wall of limitations where we can't move forward in our life. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like every athlete that runs marathons knows that there's this wall, this dreaded place where you feel like you can't move and all of a sudden your muscles aren't working anymore. In the book, The Power of Others, they talk about when Navy SEALs hit that wall, and they shared the story of this one Navy SEAL that he was swimming where he had to stay above water for this really long amount of time. And there's all of a sudden where he hit that wall and his whole body cramped up and he started to sink, and he knew at that moment that he didn't have the strength to go on. And as he started to feel the water rise on his sides and he realized he was going to drown, there was one thing that caught his eye that changed everything. He looked at his friend, a fellow Navy SEAL who'd gone through the training with him. And he said that there was nothing the guy did. I just saw him, and all of a sudden, this adrenaline surged from within me, and I realized I wasn't alone. He was standing there with me. He'd been through the training with me. He'd been through the seas with me. And if he believes I can do this, I can do this. And he said, all of a sudden, my muscles just had blood pump into them again, and I could keep on swimming. All of a sudden, I had this strength rise from within me, and it was just the power of seeing that person who's there for me. And by the way, statistically, this is true in our life, that when we know someone is there for us, it makes all the difference in the world. Now, Dr. Cloud, who was studying all these different forms of psychology, all these different techniques to help people, was actually super depressed when he found out that that was the difference. Friends. Because he'd spent all this time studying, and he realized that all that really mattered was friendship. Like, clearly, there's got to be more. I mean, I'm learning all this info, this knowledge has to be important. It can't be just friends. But it is, with one caveat. It doesn't matter just that you have a friend. It does matter what kind of friend they are. Who you're connected to and how you connect with others is super important in that. And we work with the Source, and one of the things that you see with a lot of the people at the Source is they develop these little tribes, these little homeless communities within a community. And these communities are the very thing that helps them stay afloat. And I mean that because it's the swamp of the summer right now, just in the air, it's hard to stay afloat. But these little tribes, they don't get to vacate into the AC very much. So they cling to each other and they help themselves through the difficult circumstances. The problem becomes that when one of them has an opportunity to advance, to better their life, to get out of that lifestyle, often it's the same tribe that drags them back down. And I've seen this, by the way, it was tragic when I see this with youth kids, that their parents actually didn't want them to be better than they were. And I'd see their parents just drag them down. It's like, oh, you think you're so good that you're going to go to college? You think you're better than your kinfolk, right? And they drag them down. And it was tragic. It's funny, but it was tragic to see. And it's the same thing that happens in tribes. And there's actually a man here who wishes to remain anonymous. His name is Steve Turner. And Steve Turner was one of these guys who was in this lifestyle of the homeless community. He was homeless, he was on his own, but when he had the opportunity to jump ship, to outgrow that tribe and to become better, he took it. He took it. And he clinged on to a better friend, a better group. And number one, and I know he'll testify this till the day is done, it was God in his life. And his relationship with God that showed him that, you know what? I can be better than this. And Steve not only got out of that living behind the dumpster phase and now has his own place, but he actually works with the Source to help other homeless people realize they can overcome too. He's also a vet, by the way, so a great guy to honor right now. And thank you for coming, Steve. I am privileged to call you friend, and I'm happy to stand in any storm with you, because that's what it's about. That's what we have here to offer in church communities, is we want the storm that we stand together, that when you're weak, I will help you up, and when I'm weak, you'll help me up. And pastor or no, there's times that I need help, and you guys lift me up and help me continue on in that storm. It's that power of that community together that we need to keep in mind, to keep connected with. But we need to keep looking at what connections are really helping and what connections are hurting. There's another book that I'm still engulfing and just learning as all I can from it, but it's The Give and Take by Adam Grant. And in it, Adam talks about who is the most likely to succeed and who is the least likely of givers, takers, and I can never remember the other group, but it's the ones that are fair trade people, they're exchange people, right? And you know the cliche, right? First, nice guys finish last. So the first question he says is it true that nice guys finish last? And the answer is yes. Statistically, when you look at givers, they are the worst in business. The worst in so many different fields. Givers are the lowest between givers, fair trade people, and takers. But hold on, because there's good news. Who are the best? Givers. I know what you're thinking. I just said they were the worst. They're both. So on the trail, on business, any real metric you look at, givers succeed more than anyone else, more than takers, more than people that try to make things fair. Givers succeed. Also, givers are the worst. And the reason is givers sometimes burn out. They sometimes get to be doormats, and they get walking all over, and they get taken advantage. And there's some Christians that I've seen that are trying to be givers, and they're struggling, and they're failing, and they're wondering, is this really what Jesus called me to be? To just a doormat to the world's worst people that just want to take advantage of me. And I deeply believe that that's not what God has intended for us. God wants us to be finishing this race as if to win. We want running this race as if to get the prize. And I think that givers can be super successful in the Jim Bailey kind of way of doing it. In the we lift other people up and we build that community of people that are givers too. We build the community of givers. See, the best example for this has been my parents. My parents are in vacation right now in Michigan. I hate them. But they are amazing examples of what love should look like. Because they're both so selfless and they absolutely put the other person first. And listen, if you want to talk to a pastor that's never fought with his wife and had a great relationship his entire marriage, then go see somebody else. I was asked about that on the radio. They said, have you ever argued with your wife? It was Rhett, he asked me. And I said, I married an Irish lady. I fight every day with my wife. And the reality is that what I have found about love is love costs me my life. It costs me everything. My marriage has not been like smooth sailing all around the way, and it's so pleasant and wonderful and great to be married today. But what I found is if you lose your life for love's sake, you will truly find love. You will truly find the meaning of life. And so much more, and foremost, I wouldn't be even able to survive my marriage if it wasn't for losing my life for Christ's sake first. But when I lose my life, which we talked about last week in the reading that leads up to this, if you lose your life for Christ's sake, you will truly find it. You will truly find this purpose and this meaning through the marriage. And my marriage is one of my biggest treasures in my life. It's cost me more than anything besides maybe my relationship with Jesus, but I love my wife and I love my marriage to her because we fought through these things together. And again, it's harder, but it's better. And that's what, we all are striving for. But when I listen to my parents who also fight sometimes, not that my parents don't fight, I always want to take notes. This is the way you're supposed to fight. There's no cussing, there's no yelling. I mean, I'm not there yet, but I'm writing it down. I'm interesting, okay. No name calling, right? Got it, okay. There's I feel I'm hurt when you do this, and I love you, and this is the thing that I wish you knew about how great you are. And I'm thinking, this is a weird fight. But it's an example of what happens in a community where people think better of the other person and think of the other person first and lift them up. And that's what I all want to strive to be as a community of God together. So you guys know, you guys who are not new know that I often have little illustrations to talk about this. And so one of my favorite parts of this verse that we just read, where it says, if you offer just a cup of cold water to one of the least of these in my name, surely you will not lose your reward. Surely you will get your reward in heaven for just offering a cup of cold water. And I know what you're thinking. In this land of abundance, who wants a cup of cold water? You better, okay, I guess a lot of you. Oh. I wasn't expecting that. Get these people water. We've got rewards to give out. Okay, but for me, I don't know. Water is just not exciting. Water is not thrilling. I want sugar in that water. Put some caffeine in it, put some carbon in it. We'll call it a soda or a pop, depending on where you're from, and that is good, okay? But water, I don't know, you better put some fruit in it and infuse it with something to make it drinkable because I'm so used to the flavor. Until, and this is why I think so many hands went up, it becomes summertime in Florida. And then all of a sudden my thirst becomes awakened and I realize I am truly thirsty. Jerry Seinfeld even did a thing recently about how you gotta hydrate nowadays. You always gotta hydrate, 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 hydrate. Because what will happen if you don't hydrate enough? You'll get dehydrated. Won't I get thirsty first? Nope. Apparently, according to the experts, if you get thirsty, it is too late. So what do? Well, just try to catch all of your face as it dries up and falls off because you didn't hydrate. And now they've got different Gatorades. Right? They got the Gatorade for before the workout, Gatorade for performance during the workout, and Gatorade after the workout. To where Jerry Seinfeld asks, how many calories and electrolytes am I losing going from the couch to the refrigerator and back? You need 3 different types of Gatorade just to survive it. Well, I've been watching this past week another great man that I have the honor of being friends with, Mike in the back there, who I'm trying to keep things appropriate, so I won't say his name title, but he is the person that takes care of the property, the church property here. And he is out there, and I'm watching him in this humid, just sweltering summer, sweating. I believe it's sweat. I just know that I see him in the morning, and his shirt is one tone, and then it's like 3 shades darker in the afternoon. So I'm assuming that that's just a shield of sweat, an armor of sweat that he wears. And I'm thinking about how, as I've been reflecting on this verse, he would probably be really loved by a cup of cold water. Now, I haven't quite given him the cup of cold water yet, but I've heard that the thought counts, so you're welcome, Mike. So sometimes in our life, we see people that through life circumstances, their life has gotten a little mucky. Their life has gotten a little full of junk and trash, and we want to help. So we want to welcome others. We want to be people that make a difference in our lives. So if we're good and loving people, if we're good friends, we want to pour into them, right? And we might have some more things to work on in this church. All right, so we pour into them, and what we see is, we pour onto the floor too. We see, well, we've lightened their life up a little bit, right? But there's still a lot of junk in there. And we could pour out more and more, but often we just get to the point, if you're like me, that we all of a sudden feel like, I don't have any more to give. Like, I've poured everything I have into this person, and there doesn't seem to be much difference. And what I'm here today to tell us is that there might be a missing ingredient if we really want to make a difference in other people's lives. So if we pour this in with the missing ingredient, we see... That's right. You can clap. That life changes. And what is this missing ingredient that causes the change? Bleach. No, it's God. It's God. When we're doing it not as ourselves. So he doesn't just say, offer a cup of cold water, but he says, offer a cup of cold water in my name. Offer a cup of cold water in my love. When we, with our love, go and point people to God's love, we find a love that will never fail them. Because no matter how good we can be as a church, no matter how loving and welcoming we can be, and I love Grandma Sylvia's sharing. I mean, it makes my heart go pity-pat to see that we have that. And there was a couple that I will actually allow to remain anonymous just in case. But they were here last Sunday, and then they wrote this review, a 5-star review on Facebook, which was awesome, by the way, if anyone. And so they were saying how welcoming we were as a church and how much we made them feel at home. There wasn't, but that I'm glad you did too. And so the point is, when I hear that, it gets me so excited and happy to be a part of this. Because I'll tell you, I've always loved people, but I've never really been good when I was younger at showing them that I love them. It's taken me a long time to learn to listen to people, to learn how to try to be a loving. It's not easy, especially because people come from different cultures. And what they see as loving and embrace as helpful is different. And so we have to listen, we have to be careful, and we have to figure out the best way to love them. But when I hear that we're doing that, like that's to me the biggest compliment our church can receive, is that we're a welcoming church. We're a welcoming place. And that doesn't take me, that takes all of us together. And even if you're here for the first time, that's one of my, I would be super excited if I all of a sudden had someone who hey, are you here for the first time? And they're like, no, I come every week. And they're like, oh, what about you? I'm like, oh yeah, this is my first time here, but welcome. It's good to have you, right? That would be awesome. Like, you guys get it. You're members immediately, right? Because we want to be a welcoming place. A place where we introduce people not just to our love together, but to God's love in us. And when we've got God's love on our side, when we know God is with us, and when we're expressing that love to others in a language they understand, it transforms lives. It transformed my life. When I really honestly look at the difference that happened in my life, it's been a friendship. It's been a relationship with someone who welcomed me to a better way of living. It's been a friendship with someone who just showed me a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more strength, a little bit more growth on a specific area that allowed me to overcome it. I saw them doing it. I knew I could do it. I asked them, how did you do it? And I heard, with God. And that's the secret. And so when you're going through the storms of this life, the tempest tossed, to the people that feel like in the rest of the world, they're the refuge, they're the wretched, lost, right? Come here and you'll find an open golden gate of love that says, here is the shelter of the storm. Through God's love, we together can make a place of love for those who are seeking shelter. And we can make a difference in their lives and change what was dirty to clean, what was wounded to whole, through the greatest strength and the greatest tool we have. The power of God's love and the community He's brought us to. But what I need from you all is to be welcoming, to open up your hearts, to open up your lives, and to welcome, to share, and to stay when the storm hits, to stay when the struggles happen, to stay when the fight happens, in it together. I'm in it, till death do us part. And I hope you are too.